house.
Right. You can, right? You can, and I like what you touched on right there. So you hit on a bunch of different things. So you talked about the prequal. Does everybody use some type of prequal when they set a listing appointment? Is everybody using that as part of their process? You guys understand what the prequel is? Good.
See, that's
Go
my
ahead.
challenge. Like when I go to like schedule a listing presentation,
Mhm.
I don't do the pre, because I mean, I'm going in as with a referral. That's what makes it challenging for me to practice.
Right.
Pre-listing questions and all that. And I don't have to, I know that I'm going in with a referral.
Yeah,
So
I
it's maybe challenging for me to practice that.
Well, it's a good practice. I didn't start doing that till I got here. I didn't start doing the pre-qual, and it's a game changer. Have you ever gone to Mike Perry's Superstar Retreat?
Yeah, I've done it. I know
Yeah.
the questions and everything.
Right, so you know the questions.
Yeah.
So all it is, the way that I do it, so if I know I have a referral for an appointment on Friday at 4 o'clock, I'm still gonna do it, right? This guy is already, the one that we're gonna use as an example right now. You know, we've already been in the process. I know him from high school. We have that relationship, but I'm still gonna pre-qual him. I'm still gonna call him before and say, hey, to make sure we make the most out of our meeting. And again, we're not making it a formal listing presentation. He's like, hey, I just want to get comps. I want to get an idea of what it is. The second that you start the conversation is when the listing presentation starts. So your very first interaction with that person, the listing presentation has already started. We don't have to call it a listing presentation for it to be a listing presentation. Sometimes our goal is just to get our foot in the door. So we want to be the first to see them face to face. What? Oh, welcome. We want to be the first to see them face to face and in their house, ideally, because I know that odds are if we get inside their house, we're going to take that listing if we follow a certain type of process. So what's the reason for doing the prequal, I guess, is a better question. Why do you do a prequal? What would be the advantage to doing it?
I mean, when I'm calling them, I'm obviously making sure that if it's a husband and wife that's beside it.
Morning, sorry to interrupt.
Morning. No, welcome. I'm sorry. So husband and wife, what,
Make sure that whoever's gonna be on title.
to confirm that they're both gonna be there. Both signers are there, right?
Yeah.
So, no, that's okay. So that's the important question, right? Making sure that the people who have the authority to allow you to take the listing are both gonna be present, right?
And then to find out a little bit about why they're weak, what's their motivation,
Right?
a little bit. I'm not gonna get too much into it, just tell a little bit about why you're selling, and then from there, find out exactly going to the either or time frame of setting the appointment.
Right.
But I'm not worried at that point because it's a referral. I'm not worried about the competition. So I'm just getting ready to prepare myself to go take the listing.
Okay.
Because my foot's gonna step on that house no matter what.
Well, that's good. That's good that that's gonna happen. I also would caution you, especially as you say, in terms of, you're gonna find a little bit about their motivation, but not too much. Why not too much?
Whatever they're willing to share.
Whatever they're willing to share. Good. Because we want to get as deep as we can get on the phone. The better our prequal is, the prequal is our discovery that gives us the answers to the test when we go and take the presentation. Now, being that it's a strong referral, right? I can ask stronger questions and get deeper with them that I couldn't do if I didn't have that type of relationship with the particular person. Does that make sense?
Right.
So remember that, because that's key. This is all about making sure that when we step foot in that presentation, right? When we're face to face with that seller, that we have all the answers we can before we show up. And the most that we need to find out is what's going on in their head. What are you gonna say, Dr.
No, I was gonna say, I think there are also times where, like, make the appointment and the person is really interested in just kind of like finding out information or, what is my house worth? And then you get there and then you find out, like they're not even, they have this, and this, they have some conditions, or they have, whatever, issues that are happening that they're not even really ready to sell.
Right.
So it becomes a total waste of time to even go attend the appointment. So
And
for me,
that has happened to me where,
right,
but I eventually do get the listing, like
Right.
the one on Main Street was like that.
Right.
Now the one I am Fillmore, it was 3 appointments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But first when he signed, but then he kind of like wanted to wait, you know what, just hold on, I said, okay, that's fine, we're working at your pace here. The second time I went over there and I thought I was ready to do it, but I had already transferred over here to Century 21. he's like, he goes in and wasn't quite sure, you know, we need to talk to his wife, and the wife, not his wife, he's not married, it's a girlfriend, but she's pretty sure she was pretty much involved in the decision, but she wasn't there.
Okay.
And then the second time I said, you know what, this time your wife needs to be there, make sure Sylvia's
Right.
there.
That's what I mean, that's something that could be eliminated
Discovered.
during the
During the
pre-call. So it's just so you're not wasting gas, wasting time to kind of attend the appointment. That's been kind of my experience, that I feel like the more I found out on the phone ahead of time, and there are plenty of times that I get there, I'm like, oh, this question, and that's the
Right.
question that got me, you know, it's like.
Well,
So,
I've done that as well,
Right.
and what I've done is on the drive as that question's coming to, so what we're trying to figure out is what's going on in their head, right? We have to know, what do they know right now? What do they need to know? What do they need to find out for them to decide that they're ready to list the home and they're ready to list it with you as the professional? And what this does is this also creates more of a professional just setting, and shows that you are the professional in terms of how you treat your clients, your appointments, even if it's your SOI, even if it's your spirit. I'm telling you, it changes everything. You may think you have it in the bag and you don't have it in the bag. I'm sure there's been, because I know you do a lot of business, so I'm sure there's been a time that you've gone thinking that you had it and then found out for whatever reason you didn't get it and somebody else got the listing. Has that ever happened? Never?
Not on a referral,
Not on a referral?
not on a
Ever?
referral, but
Okay.
it has happened to me with someone I don't know.
Okay, so on a situation of somebody that you don't know, what could you have done differently, do you believe, to give yourself better chances of taking that listing?
And I think that's when it comes into
The
creating a
prequel?
protocol.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would strongly recommend for everybody is to make this pre-qualification process a part of every listing that you take moving forward. And I'm telling you, what people are concerned about, they're worried that you may talk them out of, they may bring up the commission question, or they may bring up something that you're not sure how to handle on the phone, and you don't want to ruin your chance of getting in front of them. Has anybody ever been hesitant of that, of saying too much or asking too much or discovering that? And what I can tell you is, the more we practice this and the more we feel comfortable with every question and every situation that can come out, I'm telling you, number one, your confidence is through the roof. Number two, you will know how to handle those questions, or when they hit you with commission on the phone in a way that doesn't sound defensive. It sounds like you're listening and you're still talking to them and you're assuring them. So what you're telling me is you walking away with the most amount of money is very important to you. Is that correct? And they say, yes, that is correct. Well, that's great. Well, I need to see inside your home so I can make sure that we make you the most amount of money. And we're going to talk about commission at that point. Is that fair? But I have to see inside the home first. Okay. And you have to do it in a way that they understand. You can say, look, commissions are negotiable, right? I promise you, commissions aren't going to come in between us working together, right? I promise you that you will see that what we're talking about is fair in an amount that you feel comfortable with. But ultimately, I'm going to show you how you're going to walk away with more money working with us than with anybody else out there. Is that fair enough? Yes, it is. So you find ways to have this conversation. You listen to them. They got to make sure that you're hearing them. You can't just avoid the question, but you got to answer it in a way that they still allow you to come forward, right? And I'm telling you, 90+% of the time, it doesn't come up. The question never comes up. I can tell you for myself, I was always afraid to ask about pricing because I always thought, and that's what today's topic is pricing. I always thought that I had to come up with the magic number, right? Like through all my research, I had to come up with that perfect number, and they're going to decide and pick me based on the magic number I come up with. And it's changed. That was the 22, 23, 24-year-old me coming in thinking, oh, I'm a good math guy. I can research, I can figure this out, and I'm going to wow them with the magic number that I come up with. But I put so much emphasis on that, of us having to be the expert to come up with that number. That's why they're asking me to come out, right? And how many times will they say to you when you ask them the question, what price do you have in mind? What's their response? Well, you're the expert.
Yeah.
So isn't that the perfect response to hear when you ask that question? What price do you have in mind? Well, you're the expert. Bingo. I wanted to hear that. You see what I'm saying? That's the perfect response to come back is, well, you're the expert. That's why I want you to come out and check out my place. Well, that's great. But I need to see inside your home. right? So there's two key reasons of my excuse to be able to go inside somebody's home. One is to give them a professional opinion of what their home is worth, okay? That's the number one most important reason why we need to step foot inside their home. Two, is to make sure they don't spend unnecessary money on repairs and things that they're not going to get the return on investment. And what they don't understand is the timing is critical. That the longer that they're trying to get their home fixed and waiting, what happens? Market shifts, more inventory comes in, interest rates change. You miss that window, that perfect window, because we all know now is always the best time because we know and we can predict what's happening today. We can't predict what happens tomorrow. Tomorrow, the neighbor could underlist their property by $100,000, which I've had happen multiple times because we waited one day. It's usually not a day, but I've had it happen by one day. And I use that story. I use that example. Would you rather set the bar? Would you rather anchor what your home is worth or let your neighbor who hires an agent who only charge 1% commission, no offense to the person who charges 1% commission, that was looking for a quick sale? Just gonna hang this up.
That's where he left.
That was it. That was it. He's calling his phone. Off of that. So no, that's just an intro in terms of what we're talking about in terms of pricing, but the pre-qual is critical, and that actually was going to be the focus of the class, was the pre-qual. So we're going to touch on both of those. What we do in a pre-qual process, what we do when we're preparing to list a home, what information we need to find out, what we need to research, and kind of knowing what is everybody's go-to. And this is an open discussion. This isn't just one person dictating everything and, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. I want to hear from everybody. What do you do that works? What do you feel comfortable with? What do we want to get stronger at? And how can we all feel comfortable with pricing? Okay. So that's really what I want to get into today. The other thing I want to touch on, and sorry, the internet still is a little choppy in here, even though we've had it all done. It disconnected. So let me just try to record it off something else.
Is it just the
Here we go.
system, or is it?
No, it's back on. It's working. So it should be better. The mesh is working. We had somebody come in. Some other screen popped up, so I thought it disconnected, but it's still going. So in terms of pricing, there's two fundamental beliefs that you have to have into every listing presentation. I know you've heard this 1,000 times. What are those two fundamental beliefs?
That I'm the best person for the job. And
Right.
I can get the job done.
So she's the best person for the job and that she can get the job done. How do you know that you can sell any home?
Well, I gotta believe it. It's just a matter of moving forward, knowing that I'm gonna get it done.
Right. You'll find a way, right?
Right.
But how can we guarantee, and this question would come up to me, how can you guarantee that you can sell any home on the market?
Eventually it would be priced right.
If they follow your lead.
Right.
They don't always follow our lead, right? So we can promise and we can guarantee that we can sell their home if they follow our lead. But every home will sell if it's at the right price. There's no unsellable home out there. So it's very important to understand and to believe it with conviction that if you get any home to the right price, it will cause it to sell. And one way is to understand the difference between value and price. How do you explain the difference between value and price?
The value is what someone's willing to pay for it.
That value is what somebody's willing to pay for it. I like that answer.
Driven by the market and the buyer.
So what a buyer is willing to pay. Okay. And then you said driven by the market and buyer. Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
Well, the buyer's willing to, there's gotta be one buyer who's gonna be willing to pay the price. So that at that point, that the value is there.
Okay. So there has to be a buyer who's willing to pay a particular price. So what's the difference? What is price then? How is price different from value?
That's what the seller actually decides what they want to sell their home at.
So it can be any number, right? They can come up with any number and that's your price. But how does price, and this is what we always want to make sure is a part of our listing presentation, intelligent pricing and pricing strategy. Okay, what's intelligent pricing? Anybody?
Data
Spot.
driven.
What's that?
It's based on the data that is out there as to what the comparables tell you.
Okay, so data driven, so based on what the comparables tell you. So what's for a brand new agent coming in, how does an appraiser figure out the value of a home? What are they looking at? Comparables, recent solds, how recent? Within 6 months, okay, so 6 months or less, we're at. What's typical? Half mile, I'd say half mile's safe, right? But if you don't have anything, then what happens? Then we go out further, right? We go out further, more than, even further than the 6 months, and that's always noted on the appraisal report. These are all important things to understand. Why is an appraisal and understanding how an appraiser works important?
To educate your client.
To educate your client, to help them intelligently price the property, right? Because we know, and you see me draw the picture, and this is, it's one of those beautiful pictures that we draw with the market, right? And if we price it here, the market's doing this, this is the momentum of it, right? And we're here at 700K, when really right now we should be at $650,000. But we start at 700,000, what happens? We're chasing the market down. Where do we want to get? We want to get in front of it, right? So in front of it's going to be around 600K on this one, okay? And what happens if we get in front of it? Multiple offers, and are they at asking price? If we're way under what the market value, gonna drive it up. I always talk about, what you want to change, and this is what we have to articulate to our sellers, is that we want to create, and it's our job to create more value. Value is desirability of a property. The way to increase the value of a property, there's two ways to do it. You're gonna hear Mike Ferry talk about. There's two ways to increase the value, to increase the desirability. What are those two ways? What are they?
Appearance is one of them.
Appearance. So, and let's talk, well, price, the price is the other. So how is appearance? How is appearance the way to increase the value?
Condition.
Declutter.
Declutter, make it look nice, right? But what are you willing to do? So if you have two homes at the exact same price, both at, let's just say 650,000 is the market value of where it should be priced at. Two homes at 650, one is original, the other one is completely upgraded. Which one do buyers want? The one completely upgraded for the exact same price. There's more value, there's more desirability. So the question you ask in the pre-qual, is there anything else you plan to fix prior to us listing this home? Right? We also ask, what's the condition of the home? What have you fixed? What have you done? What have you upgraded? I want to make sure that I know everything. Not only will it help me with that appraisal, when the appraiser comes in, I can give them a list of everything you've done and how this has helped increase the value to justify the higher price because we're at 700K, right? So I need those lists, and I'm going to ask these sellers to do work. I'm going to ask them to help me do my job. So I'm going to say, email me a list of everything that you fixed in the home and what you spent. If you have receipts, if you have warranties, we need to start a file. Okay. These are things I'm already leading. I'm already acting like I have the job. There's something to be said about that. You don't start showing or helping them. You help them before you ever get paid. Most times. That's our business. You're going to do a lot of pro bono work. So you have to change the mindset of, well, you haven't hired me yet. You haven't signed the listing agreement, because you're never going to get to getting the listing agreement signed if you don't already start acting like the leader that needs to lead them through this process. Okay. So the list of repairs is really important. Asking them the question, what do you plan to fix, is very important. Asking them the question, what price do you have in mind, is important. So the second thing, there are two things. You either increase what you offer at the same price to increase the value, or the second one was price. And what do you mean by that, Leanna? With price, how does that increase the value, the desirability?
Well, I think, can I give an example?
Yeah, please.
So I saw a house in Thousand Oaks in like a very rundown area.
Yep.
But it was priced like under 720.
Okay.
And the house was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, huge lot, but it needed a ton of work.
Right.
And I saw it closed for $65,000. And like that house needed a ton of work, but because people see a 7 in front of the number in Thousand Oaks, when you never see that, it flew. I think they had like 10 offers.
Right.
And that house needed a lot of work.
It's huge.
And they probably bought as is, honestly, so.
So she already hit where I wanted to talk about, because again, I just ran through this scenario last night with somebody in terms of pricing. And the focus is very common to what we were taught when we came into the business, right? Especially if you were taught to look up a particular tract code, right? This property is in the Rancho Tomas tract, okay? So there's Rancho Tomas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What happens? What's the risk? If you run an MLS search for solds and you only put in the tract of Rancho Tomas, what's the risk that you take?
Agent doesn't know what track it could be in.
There are agents that are out of area that don't know the tract.
And it might not be, they don't have access to those track codes and they're not often fall into your report.
So what's that risk? What is that risk?
You're not gonna get all the costs.
Exactly. So how do you avoid that?
Radius search, thank you.
How do you run the radius search? Just off the top of your head, because this is important.
Take that drawing and.
Exactly. So you go to quick search,
That's part of it.
you do you go to the quick search, right? If you're using Flex MLS, you run a quick search. You don't do map search, you run a quick search. Then you go to the little thumbtack on the side. There's a little red thumbtack. You click on that button, you type the address in, okay? And you can run a 1/2 mile radius, you can run a 1 mile radius, or I like to do the and draw right around it, because you can do a satellite image and make sure, especially if it's a condo or a townhouse, that they all look the same. So you're only using comps in there and you're not going to miss anything because you drew the map. Okay, that's the key. That's the first key. Second key is make sure in this kind of market, is there a lot of inventory?
No,
So how critical are the active properties?
extraordinary.
Very critical.
Yeah.
So you need to know the story of every active listing that you're competing against.
And
There's not very many.
pendings are important too.
Pendings are very important. So at different parts of the market, you won't even look at an active. Why wouldn't you look at an active in a different type of market? Not today's market, but a market where there's a lot of properties for sale.
You don't know where it's gonna end up.
You don't know where it's gonna end up. Do people overprice homes?
Absolutely.
All the time. So what are those actives now? They're distractions.
Mhm.
And they change your client's perception of what the true value of the home is. So you don't even show them actives. You print out a 1-line report, black and white, no photos, 1-line report with the 3 most important solds, 3 most important pendings, no actives. And that's all you're showing and keeping the focus on the presentation. Okay, we will get into photos. We will get into those, but that black 1-line CMA report is a game changer. When you understand how to use the data, when you understand how to show the numbers and work it in the way that you're going to hear Mike Ferry talk about on Thursday, and he's going to touch on it. And if he doesn't touch on it Thursday, he's definitely touching on it in Vegas at the Superstar Retreat. Yes,
So with your black and white 1-line CMA,
right.
do you no longer use the beautiful full color pictures?
Great question.
You bind it with our beautiful binder. Do you not do that anymore?
I still do it. I have everything. I have everything
Do
ready.
you use it?
More times than not. There are times that I don't. There's times that all I'll use is that black 1-line report and I'll get it. The other thing that I bring is what I call my report card, and I've talked about it before. And I pull all my past sales for typically, I go 2 years. 1 year, it could be pretty pathetic on 1 year these days, right? So I go 2 years back. And I'm going to show everything I sold. And I'm actually going to click on the buying and the selling side. And we'll talk about how to do this. And again, another trick that I got from Mike Ferry at a Superstar Retreat, like report card. What is he talking about? You can go to Zillow. Not everybody has their reviews and all their solds on there. But what you can do when you do this in your pre-qual, one of the best questions I ask almost every time now is, are you planning to interview any other agents? And people are scared to ask that question. They're scared. It's like, well, they weren't thinking about it. Now you put that in their head. You got to change your whole approach. You can't come from a scarce place. You got to come from a confident place. You don't care who you're up against. You don't. You don't care who you're competing against, but you need to get as much information as you can so that you know if I am up against another agent or another two agents. Who are they? What company are they with? Why do I want to know that information?
Just so you know how to prepare.
Exactly. I don't need to talk bad about them. I need to talk good about us and what we do to separate ourselves from the competition. And I know what their weaknesses are, right? And I mean, and I've never done this. I've never pulled the report card of the other agents, but some agents will go to that level, especially if you got a great track record and you got an impressive resume. Why wouldn't you want to know what the other two agents are that sold 3 homes last year and you sold 20? Why wouldn't you want to show that? Yes.
And I think that's where, farming is really, really beneficial. Like, if you pick an area and you stick to it, your track record is going to be so good. And I mean, I will just tell you, it's shocking to me. I'm in contract right now, closing escrow in 2 weeks on my 66th property, just in Village of the Park.
That's awesome.
That's
Congrats.
a lot. So I went in, I'm really bad on the pre-qual, guys. I am.
We're working on it.
I'm working on it. This is why I'm here. And I walk into this appointment, I don't know these people, they called me off of a postcard. I just sold in the neighborhood. And, you know, in my mind, I'm like, really, you haven't heard of me? Like, you know.
What's wrong? Where have you been?
Not everybody's on social media. And, I saw marketing material from other agents.
Right.
And I thought, oh, shit. Oh, like postcard, you know, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. And then I brought my report card. And I showed them, I mean, because we also went into the pricing discussion.
Right.
So I showed them the postcard. I've sold 100% of my listings ever. I've never not sold a house except for one, which was an attorney and they didn't want to sell it. And every other house I've sold.
Yeah.
And then I showed them the stats of where I sell it, because he's like, I want 1.2, but I want it, he was really wanting to list at 1.25, but the last comp sold under 1.2 of that particular model.
Right.
And after I was really toying and challenged because their house was beautiful. Do we list it for higher? Stuck with you can never price a house too low.
Right.
So we priced it at 1.2
Mhm.
and we got 3 offers, 2 cash, 1 at 1.2, 1 at 1.22, and then some sucker who was renting in the neighborhood offered 136.
Oh my God.
You guys,
We're not expecting that.
nobody's expecting that. I was hoping to get, I mean,
Yeah. We were
Even-
supposed with 225, right? That's, yeah.
136. So then I go back to one of the cash buyers who then comes up to 1.3. But $60,000 with a well-qualified buyer is definitely worth it. This is a buyer because of this market who really wanted the neighborhood. It's literally around the corner from where they're living.
Oh, wow.
And there were some it's a beautiful home, but it's not a new home and it could use a little bit of updating.
Right.
So we went with that offer. And we didn't counter, we signed it that night, 136. So when it came time to the appraiser said to me, your neighbor, these neighbors are gonna love you. And he goes, don't worry, I'll bring it in.
Wow.
And he did.
Congratulations.
And you're
So-
like, number 66, done.
That is number 66. They cannot believe it.
Wow.
They cannot believe it.
Well, they'll definitely refer you to anyone and everyone.
Well, they're moving out of state. So
Oh,
Yeah, you still get referrals from them.
Yeah.
You still do. I still have Arizona. Yeah, go ahead.
Your next postcard, you're gonna have to change that number.
Right.
Did they call you on that postcard where you put that you sold? that-
65. And
Yeah, I
then, they-
remember it said
yeah.
that work.
yes, so thank you for that, because I didn't know how many I had sold.
I
in the
had to
neighborhood
count
till
for
that
her.
day.
She can't count that high.
I know. I was like, what the hell?
You don't have that many fingers and toes.
Excel spreadsheet.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
But, then they went to my reviews on Zillow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
nice.
you know,
That's
it's a
big too.
combination of that.
So those are other things to make sure that you're doing. If you aren't, make sure you got those reviews on Zillow, right? Realtor.com. That's what's great with Real Satisfied. We do it every time with C21. You get the email, put your client's email in there if it hasn't automatically been sent to them.
Well, the value thing is what was really big, because if I would have priced the house at 135, we wouldn't have had one offer, I can guarantee that.
Yep.
If we would have priced it at 1.3, now, we could have probably priced it at 1.25. But, because I wasn't expecting 1.36, like shocked.
So has your approach changed at all with pricing in that conversation?
Well, I now have better stats. I think had I to do it over again, I would have priced it at 125 because the buyer is saying, well, we're paying $160,000 over asking.
Right,
Even though when, I talked to all of the agents before they submitted, I said, well, this is the opening, this is the starting price.
right.
Mhm.
But they're trying to use that. Well, I would hope that at, 1 point or 160 over that they would make the repairs. Like, first of all, they're minor repairs. We're making them anyway. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're paying over.
So why would you think that they would be willing to offer 160 over asking price?
'Cause-
What happened,
Well, I shared with them that we had multiple offers of cash.
right?
And then I shared with them the last two comps, which are comps for the neighborhood, but they were built 10 years later.
Right,
Mm.
but still comps.
But still comps. And then I said, and this one has a whole ensuite, which those other two did not downstairs.
Yeah, that's
Because
not-
I know the inventory,
Right,
I was able to share that with the other three agents who know I know the inventory, and I said this, and frankly, the appraiser, knowing the inventory or knowing the community, again, going back to farming. I hyper focus in Village of the Park,
right.
but I think for
Are
me,
you-
it's worked well.
You've done okay there.
I did okay.
You've done all right. Not too shabby. No, but it's huge. And I have seen the change. It just in the last few months. And being honest, and in our conversation, because we did a pre-qual together. She put me on the, she didn't tell me we were doing one together. She's just like, oh, my manager's in here. Here, it's on speakerphone. I'm like, what's going on? It was an interesting conversation, but and then afterwards I asked, and you're like, well, you're just a good salesperson. I said, no, it's not. This is what we're teaching.
Yeah.
Ask the right questions, but when you hear the openings, you gotta close, right? When you see that they're ready to be closed, you close them. Set that appointment, take that listing, right? Which is what happened, and that was one of a couple that you just popped off.
We're closing in 2 weeks and he's so grateful and his bottom line at the time was 910 and he's
What did he
thrilled.
take?
885 and he cried when I told him he got it. Cause he said I would have taken 875.
Right.
Cause he just wanted out.
So they tell you certain things, they're not lying. They're telling you what their reality is at that point in time, but we have to be smart enough, and I'm not saying we're not smart, but we have to dig deeper, right? We have to dig deep and find out, what are they really saying when they're saying 910? What was he really saying at 910?
I wanna make my money back.
Well, he wanted to at least not lose money, right?
Right.
He at least wanted to not lose money. So that's all we have to hear. That's the golden nugget, because that gives you flex, especially with commission and with other things, to make sure that we list the home, which could lead to other opportunities. Did you generate anything else off that one? Off that listing?
Leslie, did we?
Did you?
Frank's.
Did we? But you're working on possible opportunities from the listing in a market like right now.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that 910 number, people will crumble and say you can't get 910 because the comps aren't there. Were the comps there?
The comps were not there.
Nowhere
at all.
near it.
Not 885, but we listed at 875 because I knew if we listed higher than 875, we would have gotten nothing because
Right.
the last comp that sold, you guys, it sold a couple days prior to our listing for 791.
The one that was down the street, right?
Right.
Yes.
It was attached by one wall.
Mm.
So what we had to do was put a lot of spin on the fact that this was an unattached home,
Right.
completely unattached.
Mhm.
Everything else is the same. It was attached at the garage.
Mhm.
And that's what I was able to tell that appraiser, and I can't wait to call my friend Mike Westner to say, Mike, sold your house for 50,000 under, because not having one attached wall in that community is not worth $100,000.
So there's times, and I know this is on the notes here, there are times that you will only take a listing if they take it at the right price. In a market like right now, you take any listing,
And
period. Any listing. You don't lose it over price. You'll work on them, don't worry. We never want to go in bad faith. We want to tell them, we want to be real and say, hey, I always refer to the sweet spot. I don't give a specific price. I say there's a range. There's a sweet spot. We got to find where that sweet spot's at. How do we know we hit the sweet spot? How do we know we're there? Showings.
Mhm.
The showings pick up. The calls are coming in. The phone's ringing off the hook, right? When the phone's ringing off the hook, I priced it well, right? We priced it well between the seller and us, because this is a team effort. We have to educate them. We got to teach them. We got to help them understand intelligent pricing, which is everything that you're doing.
Right, but I just have to shout out to Brandon. I was not gonna take this listing because I don't take listings I cannot sell. And I
Right.
knew this guy, he's so wishy-washy.
Still remember the day on Thursday, I walked in and you're like,
I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I did everything, including up to the night before, to tell him not to sell the damn house. Because I knew I don't ever want to make false promises. And this one convinced the kid, go ahead, let's list it. And
What do you have to lose?
well,
Right?
so
Other
I had
than,
nothing to lose.
Reputation.
It's my reputation, and I'm very protective of my clients. Brandon?
but could you hurt, can't you hurt yourself sometimes by overthinking it
I would have.
and
done
being
him a dis-
overprotective?
I did. I
What,
would've.
right,
I would have done him a disservice because now he can move on. He wants to move to Europe whenever.
right.
And he knew, and anyway, I mean, you guys, I'm dead serious. Brandon, it was because of you, because I would have said, I'm not
Well,
doing it.
thank you for saying
tried to
that,
talk
but that's
about
not, if you were, and I was like, you're killing me here. You asked me to come in here, I got him, he's done, and you're like, well, what about staging? I'm like, what are you bringing up staging right now for? We have him, it's done. Don't bring up another issue with money and cost and reasons not to do it right now. I was just like, I'm like about to do a mic drop and walk out. And then she's like, well, what about staging? I'm like, Elizabeth, we're good. Put it on the market.
Those are opportunities for the guy to say no. I mean, why? Because they can make it overcomplicated. Of all people in this room, you know batting statistics, right? And there's not one baseball player, I don't care how good they are, that bats 1,000.
Mhm.
Okay, so I had an agent that I had to coach through this, and she was part of the fact that every single listing appointment that she went to, she got it. I'm like, wait, hold on, time out. What is it that you're doing? Say, I only go to the listing appointments that I know that I'm gonna get.
Right.
Like, I said, I guarantee you that if you go to every single listing appointment that you get, that you have an opportunity to getting, your average, the amount of sales you're gonna have is gonna increase by at least 20 to 30%. Why? Because she didn't want to have the 700
Right,
strikeouts.
right.
She was going for 100, for 1,000, right? And right now she's a very successful listing agent out there. And but it's just a matter of building the confidence that it's okay to have.
That's great coaching,
Mhm.
and it's great to change perspective, which we're all supposed to do. You all are coaches. That's the same thing as being a great leader. You're coaches, you have to discover, and we talked about, you're like, remember, you're like, I don't know why it just hasn't dawned on me, right? We're coaches. We have to discover what it is that they want. But the thing is people are stuck in a certain frame of mind, which convinces them not to take action, not to move forward, not to commit. We have to change their perspective by asking great questions to get them to self-discover what it is that they really want to accomplish. But we're stuck on price, we're stuck on commission, we're stuck on not listing a home that we can't sell. Yes, you'll learn more from what you lose than winning. And that was another top agent in the area who was just like, you know what? I don't learn from all the listings I take. I learn from the ones I lose. That's what gets you to go back and resharpen your tools. That's what gets you to go back and say, you know what? It's not just on the referrals, it's everybody. We have to develop a professional process that's going to get her better stats, better odds. But a lot of times with the situation you're talking about there, that's a safe area that you know you're going to get. And the reason why your percentage is so high, that's all ego driven too.
For
Just
sure.
being blunt, it's ego driven. And you could hurt your clients that way. Because otherwise we're not willing to take a risk, because we know we can figure out a way. We know we can figure out the answer if they're willing to listen to us. Worst case, it doesn't work out. But you have to find a way in your presentation of showing them that you're next on this line as well. Your reputation's on the line, which they don't want to hear about. They really don't care. They don't. But we know that it's important to us, right? But even more, it's your time and it's your money that you're next on the line as well. Because if you don't sell it, most listing agreements are written in a way that that's your money, that you're out. And I'd rather it be that way so they know I have skin in the game. I'm not going to let this not sell. You're not going to. But again, as long as we're working together, we have to be able to communicate. We gotta have those tough conversations. So that's all we're developing in terms of the process. Does that make sense? Yes.
Can I add something? You use the word expert. You don't become an expert without making mistakes.
Mhm.
And so the first thing that we worry about when we take a listing that is overpriced is like, what are my fellow real estate agents gonna say about me,
Right.
right? You care about it, one. Two, if it doesn't sell and it's on your, like a little blip as to why this expired, it's like, yeah, you know, it's like what I learned from that is that I need to, voice my, my expertise that that price is not gonna sell a house. It's not gonna get you the buyers. And what we've learned from that is I've become an expert in pricing, and this is the range that you should be considering listing your price at. So it's okay to have those expires on it. And congratulations, this is not to pick on you at all.
Oh, my
It's just that-
ego's too big for that.
And I'll tell you the story. I had the opportunity of going to a listing presentation. And I think I already had it because what Jesse said is that it was a recommendation that was actually referred by one of their friends.
Mhm.
And I didn't have excuse my language, the balls to show up to listing appointment because I was intimidated by that price point.
Right.
Because I felt like, oh, here's Jorge, this is 15 years ago.
Mhm.
He's out of his league and
Right.
selling a house up in the Estates. And it was a high profile, person, but I just didn't want to have that negative mark. So I said, you know what, I'm just not going to show up.
Wow.
So lesson learned is like, hey, I helped somebody, we're listing an $11 million property in Sherman Oaks. 15 minutes, and the lady said yes, because it was all about the confidence.
Right.
So I told the lady, it's like, I know that you want 12, but
Yeah.
data shows that it's probably gonna sell between 10, 9, and 11, so it's a commercial property. But I learned the lesson that it's okay to get the rejection, so.
It is.
Mhm.
It's okay to get the rejection. I
Mhm.
mean, you can't lose something you don't have.
Right.
That's one thing that a lot of people don't think of it that way, but it's like, you can't lose something. You don't have it. You don't have it until it's done, right? You have to have the listing first. First, you have to have the listing agreement to even have a chance to be in the game, right? Then from that point, now we got to sell your home, and you want to differentiate that in your listing presentation as well. Anybody can list your home, but not everybody can sell your home. Even more than that, sometimes a lot of people can sell your home, but are they going to protect you in the process and do it the right way? Right? And advocate and protect you. And that's what we do here at C21, right? This is why we have this all set up. This is the power that you have behind you. This, there's so many different things I can go off on this, but no, just great examples.
Yeah,
That was big.
one of the, big lesson learned in my life, that who knows where, business would have taken off, whatever, a long time ago, but, the other thing is that which is the next property coming up in the market, and you have all the intel because you interviewed for it too. So maybe they don't give you the listing, but guess what? You know that there's a property coming up for sale and you get that buyer ready. You know the motivation of the seller, the quirks and the benefits of that house already. You can be the first one to show the property when it comes available. So that's the silver lining if you don't get the listing, but we're gonna do whatever it takes to get the listing back.
Right.
I made a huge mistake, by the way, on that particular listing
Uh-huh.
presentation. I forgot to print out a listing agreement. I didn't even bring a listing agreement with me.
Right. So you docu-signed it.
They signed right then and there. I got on their
Oh,
Wi-Fi.
Oh, you hopped on, right?
They did it because they wanted to sign right then and there.
That's
So
the
the
beauty
time
of
that I met with them the first time
Right.
on a Saturday, we were under contract the following Sunday. And they couldn't believe it, but don't do that. Don't not bring a listing agreement.
And print one out still, if you have the time to do it, print it
Always.
out. But worst case, you pull it up just the way that she did and sign it or send it. by
I hadn't even
DocuSign.
written it.
So.
Right.
There's this, if you set up your listing agreement on DocuSign where you're the first client.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna leave whatever the listing fee is, and then whatever the price is going to be, you leave that for yourself to be the first one to complete, right?
Yeah.
So you always go assuming that you're gonna get the listing by having that documentation ready, is like, do you want paper or plastic? I mean, sorry, paper. You can say that.
Paper plus.
So.
Para llevar.
There's a strategy that you can do that if you have your setup, if you set your transaction manager to help you with that. You can say, hey, they're ready to go.
Yeah, or
Mhm.
it's because I don't do the pre-listing.
Package.
Like, I don't ask the questions. I don't do the
Oh, the
pre-listing,
prequel.
the prequel.
Right.
I don't do it. You guys, it's bad. I'm here to tell you, it was
It's working.
Well, you're still, well, you're getting it, right? But you're having to, so this is the challenge when you don't prequal before, is you have to discover on the spot. And you have to already have as much research as you can. Now there's more pressure on you to say the right things and lead them and not piss them off by saying something that you offend them with because we didn't discover it ahead of time. So you can still, but you don't have to close them right then and there, okay? You can set up a second appointment and make it, that's actually, Ken teaches a 2-step part of his listing presentation. He does the discovery in person, face to face. And then he says he's gonna have another one when he goes back, looks at all the data. And then he comes in and he closes on the second presentation. You just future pace it. You set it as that as the example, okay? We're at 10:24 here. Any questions, any concerns with some of the stuff we've talked about? I want to touch on a few of the things that I passed out with the pricing and future pacing, and maybe we can just jump straight to future pacing, but this should hopefully sum up a lot of what we've already talked about, okay? Does everybody have it? Or does anybody need one? Okay, give it to you.
The future facing, or are you going to?
Pricing and future pacing,
Are there two?
we've already hit it, yeah.
Did you want?
Future pacing, I like a little bit better.
There you go.
You got one, Leanna?
Yeah.
You good? Yeah,
need a future page.
One more, is that what you're saying?
One more?
yeah, you got a future pacing?
Yeah, I have a future facing and price.
Yeah, it's just pricing, you're on how to present, that's a different. Future facing, pricing, and future facing. These are good to have too, okay? All right, so as we talk about the different skill sets of what we need to master, pricing is a big one here, okay? So just gonna read it off and unless somebody else wants to read, because you guys been hearing me talk the whole time. Nagman, you wanna read it off for me? So just starting off for pricing, no, you don't? Okay, Leslie, anybody wanna read it off?
I can't see, so.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna jump into it. So pricing. The home isn't selling, it's always about price. Homes will generate an offer priced within 4% of the market value, okay? The seller will generally be the highest bidder for their home. We aren't looking for someone who likes the home more than they do. We're looking for a person who likes it closest to them, and they will most likely want to offer less money than what the seller wants to sell it for. Reasons the seller thinks the home is better than their neighbors. They've decorated it the way they like. They put in the upgrades they wanted. The yard is the way that they like it, okay? Evaluate the price of the home every 3 weeks. And we're gonna talk about future pacing here. So no showings and no offers means that the home is overpriced by 7 to 10%. Some showings, which is 1 to 3 per week, no offers means that the home is overpriced by 5 to 7%. We have to already, in our initial listing presentation, start planting that seed so that they understand the concept of making sure we're priced correctly, because when we're here, and then eventually 3 weeks later, we drop it to the price that we should have started with, what happens to the actual value of the home? Now you're down here. Now we should be around here, but we're still chasing it down. We need to get in front of it to drive that up. And that's the biggest thing that I've heard Mike Ferry talk about it. He says, what do you want? Do you want a multiple offer situation or do you want a single offer? If we're overpriced and we get one offer that comes in, are they gonna write full price?
No.
If it's been on the market for 30 days, what are they gonna do?
They're gonna write it at whatever they think the price is,
And,
and that might be the best offer.
and even leverage it even more than that and try to come in super low. Okay, so we have to get out in front of that. We need to put the pressure on the buyer like you did. Yes, you coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? And put it at 125. But maybe 1.2 was the sweet spot. Maybe 125 only brought in one offer that was at 125 or 124. But 1.2 brought in 1.3 plus. Why? That's the reason why I asked the question, why? Yes, you sold it well, but you put pressure on them because it was multiple offers, because you priced it at a number that had more buyers. So how do you open up? And that's why I say I want to cast the biggest net possible to capture as many qualified buyers. Not that I want to create a bidding war. You'll hear sellers that hate that. You got to ask the questions. They don't like that. So when you hear that, you gotta be a little bit more careful with your pricing, maybe not go to 7 or 650, but we need to be about 675, right? Somewhere a little closer to that sweet spot, because maybe they're okay with 1 or 2 offers. But I always tell the sellers they need at least 2, and I'll get you all the terms that you need, but I need at least 2. Okay, if I have 1, I'm at the mercy of that 1 offer. And even worse, I've done it before where I've done a favor for a friend, took an offer right away, 2 days on the market. They wrote full price. It was somebody who I knew. Next day, guess what happened? They backed out. They got it so easy.
Yeah.
This is a real story. Gave them a gift. The next day they canceled. Oh, they just got cold feet. I was like, are you kidding me right now? I potentially risk this listing right now of actually selling. I took your offer, didn't play any games, didn't counter anything. You learn these hard lessons and you change your approach. It's not that you're not trying to cooperate. Remember your job. Your job is to negotiate the best terms for your seller, period. That's what you're hired to do. Even if you represent both sides, that's your job. That's what you were hired for. You can't forget that. You have to disclose that to the buyer where they understand and they know my job is to make them every penny that I can and protect them in terms of repairs and every other part of the process. So we have to know our job and we have to be able to articulate that. Okay. So we talked about the pricing, and that's the pricing strategy when they're saying that no showings, no offers means 7 to 10 overpriced. Okay. Some showings 1 to 3, no offers, you're 5 to 7% overpriced. And do the math for them. So they see you're off by $40,000, right? They see that. So you should be previewing property every week to give yourself a stronger knowledge of your local market. This will give you more confidence in pricing the property. I think you got just a little bit of confidence over there, Village of the Park, right? Just that, right? But you have to know this stuff inside and out.
I'm naming the neighborhood, by the way.
I know it's going to be Everson. Village of the Everson. Okay, you are not responsible for the price, the market is. Okay, because the seller will come back and say, well, you told me this price. You told me what's going on. I said, no, I told you the pricing strategy. We don't dictate the price. And I'll tell them this in the listing presentation. If you're not recording this or writing this down, you should be. The only time an agent can promise you a certain price is that they have a cash buyer and they're willing to pay that amount of money. Another thing you need to make sure you're saying in your listing presentation, the only time you can undersell a home is when?
You don't put it on the market.
You never put it on the market. You sell it before it ever hits the market. If a property is exposed for at least 72 hours, I say 7 days now, but at least 72 hours, you need to fully expose the property on the open market. You'll never undersell a home. Yes.
So, I like that, I like the strategy of 7 days on the market.
Right.
How do you coach potential buyers and buyers agents that you want to do that in order to hold off them, putting in an offer and giving you 24 hours notice to respond?
Well, that's their fault. Sorry.
I mean, I'm just
No.
saying, I
To-
don't.
Right.
Either.
So it's a great question. Okay. Very first thing I will determine based on how many calls are coming in and how many showing appointments. I've said it, long one's an easy one to use an example, because in the first day I had 25 showing appointments. Within 3 days, I had 40 showing appointments. We had 20 offers that came in on that property listed at 740. And I picked 740, even knowing the last comp was at 760, because I knew the conforming loan rate was at 723. So I'm looking at 3.5% down. What's going to capture the most buyers?
Right.
That's where I went with the 740 price. We could have went at 8. And we had another agent in the office listed at 8 and they had nothing going. And I told her, I said, you need to drop, it was 4 days on the market. To drop the price, $50,000. She dropped it to 750. She already had offers at 780.
And here she comes.
Right? I wasn't gonna say who it was, okay? But that's what we're here to help
But
with. Yeah.
Leslie, the strategy for the 24-hour offer, you can also revise that offer with the counter, so I wouldn't worry that much about that, but what he's telling you is and that buyer may not necessarily be 100% committed.
Right.
They're just throwing things in the wall to see which one.
That's kind of where I think
Yeah.
that they're not really committed. Like you were Leanna had a buyer,
Yeah.
kind of Barbara, gave her 24 hours. Whatever happened with that? I mean,
So we countered them my clients dropped 25K, countered, and then they didn't respond. We did a price reduction of 50K. And I put it on the MLS, I just reached out to the agent. The agent's really cool, it's the client, and I was just like, hey, just letting you know, we dropped it to 2.5. He's like, my clients will come in at 2.3. So he went an additional 100,000 under what they even submitted.
Yep.
And so I actually talked to my clients this morning and she was pissed. She was just like, okay, you can just say no at that point. Like, you don't have to be a dick about it.
Right. No.
That's that Bay life. Just kidding.
So the other thing as to why 7 days, like in your case, we knew that there was somebody waiting for that property to come up and they were ready, right? To jump. Not that a property came in our neighborhood that that it fit us perfectly. It was 6 bedrooms, 4 baths. And it had a whole different wing so I could throw my teenagers into that room. But they accepted an offer within 24 hours. It didn't even give me enough time to get my pre-qualification paperwork to Tamir, because not everybody is like walking around ready to buy. So 7 days is somewhat reasonable time as well. No, it was in Ventura.
So I wanna still answer the question because that's the $1 million question that you're asking right now, and how to handle it the right way. Because what I'll coach my clients, my sellers, and let them know. I've done it before where I put it right out the gate on the MLS, knowing it was priced at a certain point, that it was gonna create a multiple offer, and I set a date. And I've done that, and everybody waited until the last minute before they submitted, or it just discouraged people from even writing. Okay, so what I recommend, and this is how I respond to every agent who asks, how are you presenting offers? Are you presenting when they come in? Or are you gonna present them on a particular day? I let them know, I present every offer as it comes in, and I keep all the terms confidential. I'll submit it, right? They'll see it. With that being said, we have a specific marketing strategy set in place. We have open house on Saturday, we have an open house on Sunday. They will not make their final decision until the plan is to not make the final decision until after our last open house. Then we will review everything and speak from there. Now the seller or the buyer has options. They could wait, or they can try to be the first offer in. Because that goes somewhere that has merit as well. Being the first offer in, showing that you love the house right out the gate in writing. And sure enough, on Lawnwood, within 24 hours, they wrote a 24-hour expiration, wrote 760 all cash, and gave us possible rent back. That's 20 higher. One of my sellers said, let's go with it. I had to convince her to hold off. We ended up at 791. That same buyer at 760 cash came up to 790 cash.
And you told them you were going to wait. You
And
wanted to
they
wait.
played hardball, and she was I'm trying to remember the area. It's like Malibu, but she was a top producing agent. She told me on the phone, she was, I'm a closer. I gotta tell. She told me, she's I closed. And she came in aggressive, strong. She gave it a shot. That was smart on her part. Because if you wait, you know what's gonna happen. You're already competing against everybody. Now you're just guessing in the dark. So give it a shot. Because in some situations, you'll lock it up. I locked one up in 6 hours. I gave a 6-hour expiration with an agent that I knew. But I made a great argument with it. And I said, look, you're gonna screw around. Yeah, you'll get higher than what I'm offering right now. But the highest comp is here. It's not gonna appraise. I just had an appraisal shortage on another property. So you're gonna go for the wrong, and I didn't say it, but she knew what I was talking about, FHA buyer, that it was gonna be more difficult for her. And with my client who had 10% down, I knew we can guarantee it. Because I already spoke with my loan officer who did a DU approval and said I can go up to a certain range and we're good. It will only cost the seller an additional $1,500. And I said, my buyer will cover that $1,500. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I gave that range, I sold it 6 hours and I closed the
So
deal.
you did your thing
I
opposite
flipped
for your
it.
buyer.
For my buyer, I flipped it 100%. Depends on
No,
what
yeah,
hat
of
you're
course,
wearing.
of course.
If you're a buyer's agent, you have to give it a shot. Otherwise, you're gonna keep losing. And
Well,
keep,
that's what I'm
and keep
worried about,
ending up in
buyer's
second
agents like
place.
you. So, yeah.
Right, but if I'm on the listing side, I have to set the proper, I don't lie to them. I never say, oh yeah, they may think about it, oh no, we're just gonna hold off. Believe me, that conversation with that cash buyer was one of the hardest conversations I've had, and she was strong. But I had 40 showings set. You think I'm okay if this one walks away? I'm feeling pretty good because I had 40 showings set. We were getting more offers and she knew it. She's like, okay, well, we'll check it out on the open house. At first, she was like, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, we're at 12 o'clock, we're done. No, we're out of here. She had to. But sure enough, she came back in the open house. I met the buyers. That's an uncomfortable situation to be at an open house and have that buyer walk in and they're looking in, they're seeing the place, just everybody running through that place. Right?
So let me get this clear. She came in with an offer and she wanted to take it. She said she's not waiting, bye-bye.
Right.
And she was the one that came in with the.
20 over. She wrote 760 all cash. She never said she'd give the rent back. She said they were willing to work
Well,
with.
that's not, the thing is, it's like how an agent. How anybody comes in, like, I just wanted to sell houses. I didn't realize there was a lot of psychology into
Oh,
this.
yeah.
I'm like,
Uh,
God. But I quite
Hey,
could.
you have to be watching like this.
Yes. But, well, I have to, but, it takes me back. I just want to say one thing. I was, when I came into the business, I got my license. I had my friends wanted me to sell their houses. I didn't even know anything about the business other than learning how to pass state board.
Right.
That's all we knew, right? And so, so I had this house and I didn't know, the pricing was wrong. I didn't know then, but we priced it wrong.
High or low?
High.
Okay.
And what happened was, it was that point where, I think it was June when everything went boom,
Mhm.
right? And so we came in with the, April, May,
Right.
February.
Off those comps,
Right, yes.
the lower interest rate.
But I remember sitting there doing open houses, like 3 of them, and getting nothing. And then I finally thought to myself, I was talking to Jesse, I said, you know what? We have to get in front of the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And we have to lower the price down. We have to get her to lower the price down. We had an attorney involved and everything.
Right.
That took place, took a little bit, but once. And I was just a brand new agent. But I knew that we had to
Well,
get
your
in front of
instinct-
it. Yeah, my instinct told me. And when we finally did that first week, I had 2 offers.
Right.
Right, Jesse?
Yeah.
I had 2, and I would,
Yeah.
well, but I was like a new agent.
Right.
And so when you said the value,
Right.
and making sure, like, well, I learned a lesson on that one because we came in with and then she was upset saying, I've already dropped the price down. You guys already made, and I said, I'm sorry, but we're not making you drop the price. It's the market
100%.
that is making, and I knew that.
And you don't apologize for that, right? But we have to educate our clients before we take the listing of what to expect, and that's called future pacing. So let me just jump to that because we've already hit on enough on pricing. Read the rest of it. There's a lot of good stuff on there, okay? So future pacing with the seller. Future pacing is about helping the customer or the client to know what to expect. What are the things that a client can expect to happen during the listing and sales process? Here are a few suggestions. Actually, before, if you look above it, agent's job to future pace, set expectations, recast a clear vision. Great leaders know how to cast visions, right? We have to explain to them what their experience is going to be like. Good, bad, right? Some of the things that I say when I talk about the 4 pillars is that on a national average, we have to sell every home twice. That from the starting point, from right now till a closed transaction, more than 150 phone calls are going to take place. They don't understand what our job is. We have to help future pace them. Why would I say that you have to sell every home twice?
Falls out.
Falls out of escrow as we're trying to figure out timing, as we're working backward. And that's another thing. When do you need to be in your next home? Figure out what the date is. Start working backwards. What's your average days on market? 21 days, right? Let's say it's 21. Right now it's about 14 to 17, but let's say it's 21 days. That's 3 weeks to find a qualified, motivated buyer that can close your transaction. Well, if it falls out, average transaction's 30 days, and it falls out once, add another 30 days on top of that, right? You could be in escrow for almost 21 days, fall out of escrow, and it's another 30. So we got to start back ending it, working from that way, that point to here. And now the urgency to list now becomes even stronger because we need it. Worst case scenario, we sell it faster and then we work a rent back or a situation out where they still get to stay in their home until that specific date. But we took the listing and we lit the fire under their tail to get things rolling, right? These are the things that we need to do. Recast a clear vision. revisit the seller's motivation. If you are not pre-qualifying, if you're not discovering, even though you have a referral and you take it and they sign the listing agreement and it's a piece of cake, you have not discovered their motivation. Guess how challenging it is to get them to drop the price? It is all about what you do up front. Everything I do, whether with a seller or a buyer, I'll spend an hour. You see, we spend an hour and a half together every time we get together on Tuesday, right? Are you getting value out of this? Are we digging deep? Are we really thinking? That's what it takes. It takes an hour, hour and a half. You have to spend, they're going to teach you to be more efficient. I'm going to tell you, you're going to miss it. You're not going to connect to the point that you need to be able to lead them, because you didn't discover their true motivation and why they need to sell the home or why they need to buy a property. But once you know it, now you can future pace them and motivate them to drop the price when you need to. Well, why were you selling your home again? Oh, it's because you want to move to Europe, right? So you don't want to have to worry about renting this property out in the market, possibly shifting even further, and you eventually walking away with nothing, right? And ruining your credit and everything else and being tied to something that you want to be in another place. Well, the only way I found that out is through discovery, because of the relationship that Elizabeth creates with her clients, that they share everything with her. It's not very hard for her to get to the meat of it. So now that she knows that, she needs to use that to make sure that she leads them in a way to get them what it is that they want. Okay. So home is seller's job. Home is available to be shown. They need to make the home available. How many sellers are like only between this window between 4 to 6 on Saturday? That's it. I don't want to be bothered during the week, or if you have tenants, it's very difficult, right? That's a whole nother conversation. Home is in showable condition and home is priced right. Future pace the clients for them to understand what their job is. You ask them, what are your expectations of the agent that they look to hire? And I have to share with you what my expectations are of my clients for us to work together to get you the results that you want. And Mike Ferry's word, in the time you want, right? You just say, I'm going to get you what you want in the time you want, how you want, right? And you have to know what to say to people to get them those types of results. Okay, so future pacing. What can they expect from you in terms of the marketing the property? Photos, timelines. I close with the photos almost every time. Once we get to that part in the conversation, I'm going to say, okay, my photographer is phenomenal, right? And they're typically booked out. So I need to look at the calendar here. When do you think your home will be ready for us to take professional photos so that we can, then it's another 24-hour turnaround time. Then we can put it on the MLS. Now we can start marketing your home. So I start working with the photos as my closing question, but you want to explain to them the process of that. Okay. What should they expect during their showings? What should they expect? Should they be there? Should the dogs be there? Should the cats be there? Right? Recordings. Do we have some type of video recording? You know, do we need to disclose that with our buyers as we're going to the property? Do we talk about, oh my gosh, this market's crazy right now, right? We're going to lowball this home. The things my seller was telling me on the 720 Longwood property is like, it was insane what people were saying as they were walking up to the front door. It was crazy what they were saying. Yeah.
Is there a video with all the little work?
We should create a reel off that, or just do our own, you know, just make one.
Hey, actually,
That'd
that's
be
a
a
good
good one.
idea, but just for our education.
Right.
If you can get that recording out, if they kept it, but it was just for us to
Yeah,
listen to it.
that would be good. We need some popcorn for that one.
Yeah.
Okay, what happens during an inspection and how can they prepare? How will they know if the price is too high? We just talked about that. Do transactions ever fall apart? What causes it? How will possession take place and when? That's an important thing to future pace. For the buyer, what is the process for looking for homes? How do offers usually work and what do they need to know? The purpose of an inspection and what it isn't. Why financing plays such a big role and how they can help the process go more quickly. Get the lender what they need. How will possession take place and when? More transactions could be saved if we future pace our clients and let them know what to expect. Tell the prospect about the worst case scenario you've seen. This way, when something goes wrong with their transaction, it won't feel like it's that bad. I actually use that all the time, especially with the home inspection report. And I'll say, look, on a scale 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, and 1 being, you know, I usually say 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. I'll say this is like a 7, right? Or an 8. Yeah, it's a 1960s home. They're gonna find quite a bit of stuff, but I'm already future pacing them before the home inspection. Already having that conversation in that long initial meeting. And then after offer gets accepted, I'll set another meeting up with them and say, I know we talked about all this before, but these are the next steps here. And then I'm gonna future pace them with the home inspection, okay? Makes things so much smoother. That was the top agent that I met, and he said it's all about setting expectations. Set proper expectations, life gets a lot easier, okay? This is how you create value, and this is also how people choose you. That's all I have on this. Is there anything else, anybody like to talk about? Yes,
A
sir.
couple of things, never, once you have these things that you do at a listing presentation, please don't deviate from them. You know, because it actually will challenge the success of your relationship with the seller. Two different examples, mom and dad. The worst transaction I've ever had with my parents. Okay, and it's only, and I'm not, it's, you coach them through the whole thing, and then when you sit them down to the listing presentation, my dad would just refuse to sit through it. My mom kind of knew what was going on when I told her, well, this is what we're gonna do and so forth, and then after the close of escrow, it's now the family scenario. You didn't do this for us. I said, yes, I did. And so just never deviate from that.
Once you
Okay,
do that.
number two. And Jesse can tell you on this. I was court appointed to be a listing for a divorce scenario, all right? Did not go through this whole scenario. Let me look at the house. No, they needed for us to take a listing agreement there so they can send it to court. Horrible, horrible scenario. Biggest waste of time, me having to sit through court and through a divorce scenario that ended up about 8 months. And to only get paid 1% because of how they renegotiated the seller scenario. So, you know, and I didn't have an out on that one. I had to, the judge said, if you don't take the listing, you're gonna be in contempt of court. And I never asked for the listing. I was there in court.
That's
And
great.
then having to deal with one of the most obnoxious divorce attorneys in the county, and I've actually, I recommended her to someone depending on how her divorce was gonna go, and I said, you need to talk to this lady. I'm not her favorite person, and please don't put me in her. So anyhow, so when you are going on a listing presentation and you talk about your value proposition and what you're gonna do for them, and you've got all that stuff, you can always go back to them and say, hey, when we had this conversation, we spoke about this, right? Not in an antagonistic way. They'll remember. And number three in this whole thing is when escrow is about to close, you should do a walkthrough with your seller to remind them about the stuff that is staying with the property and not staying with the property.
That's great.
Because we had a scenario recently where the seller chose to take the scope. And I told the listing agent, I think it's gonna be cheaper for us if we go on buy a brand new scope. The liking of the buyer doesn't matter,
Right.
because our deductible is so much higher, and it was gonna be definitely a claim in court
Right.
or in mediation and so forth. So just to respond to a lawsuit for us, you're looking at about $4,500 just to respond to a lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
Buy the stove.
$1,000 stove, $1,500. And we can go up to 5,000, you know, because we're gonna end up paying for that anyway. So, so just, and when we say about, you know, do whatever it takes to take that listing. Obviously, don't sell your soul.
Right.
Don't overpromise. Don't promise that the house is gonna sell for a certain price. There's two agents that are top listing agents in Ventura County. And when they go to a listing presentation, they sell how much is the house gonna sell for? They say, I don't know. Okay, we haven't presented to the market, and the market is gonna tell us what the home.
That's exactly it.
So,
Takes all the pressure off of you. You didn't promise something was there. We know, again, we have a range, we have our professional opinion, but it's based on what the market's willing to bear. And we're not right every time. It's just the reality of it. If we are, then we're probably not taking enough chances, right? And which actually could be hurting our clients. And that was the whole point of saying, take any listing right now. It was just crazy because I've heard Mike Perry for many years. And he was just very strong at taking at the right price. Be the leader. You do these things. Well, based on what the market's doing. And he'll be a different leader, which we all need to be, different leaders for different people. And based on what the market's doing, he will say, take any listing at any price right now because there's no inventory. I was like, that's not the message I heard for the last 3 years, right? But it's based on what's going on. Then other times it's how strong pricing is, price reductions, and that's all you hear, and that's all you talk about. Not there yet, but it could get to that.
So I need some help. I have a. So what happened was, maybe you guys can help me with this. So I go to a function, BJing at this function, and, Jesse goes with me, and he says, there's an El Rio, property. It was like 740,000 or something, El Rio. And I say, well, Jesse, I said, the people in El Rio, they don't leave El Rio, they love El Rio. So you're gonna have to find someone who loves El Rio. And I turn around and there's this guy right there. Yes. I go, that guy, Joe. I go, Joe, come here. So I go, we have the perfect house for you in El Rio. He goes, well, I've been wanting to talk to you because I wanna buy a home. I don't know if I wanna go to Utah or here. And I go, why do you wanna go to Utah? Why do you wanna go to Utah? And he's all like, cause it's cheaper over there. But I go, well, what if I found you the perfect house and you don't have to leave your neighborhood? So I showed him the El Rio house, and I had it on my phone, had all the details. I looked at it real quick, and he's throwing this function.
Mhm.
So I just knew I had a little window of opportunity, and I said, let me have your number. I'm gonna send you the link to the home.
Right.
And he says, Roberta, you're gonna be my agent. I want you to sell me the house, but right now I'm busy.
Right.
So the next, this was Saturday, so Monday I sent him a message and I sent him, another link. I haven't heard from him, so I don't wanna bother him too much, but I don't wanna lose him. Like, I don't wanna be a pest,
Right.
but I'm like waiting for 6 AM to come up, so I could call him at 9 AM, like, that's
Well,
crazy, I guess.
So what you do, there's a couple things, and we'll do another class on follow-up, okay? But for somebody like that, try once a week if you can, reach out. When you go to Caravan or you see a new property that comes up, that's when you reach out to them. Only when you have a reason to reach out to them, okay? You're sending him something, whether he likes it or not, or responds, doesn't matter. You just keep sending him properties when something fits, something similar to that, and he'll engage. But the other thing I'm gonna share is, it's one person you're putting in the pipeline as a possible prospect, right? These seeds will pop. I think of popcorn just popping in the microwave, right? And it takes time before it starts heating up, and then it's like, bam, this. But you need to be patient and not overdo it, and stay in touch, communicate, right? Follow up with them, but not overdo it.
So was it too much when I said, can I schedule
Don't
your
worry.
appointment tomorrow to see the house? Was that too soon?
No,
Okay,
you're fine with that. That's your job,
Okay.
okay? Your job's to set the appointment if you can. He's busy and he's pushing back now, then you gotta respect that space, but still follow up. Just send him properties, drip them. Okay, if you set him up on a search, if you have his email, you set him up on, if you only have his phone number, you shoot him a text. Call him in a week or 2 weeks, check in on him, just say, hey, just curious if you'd like to set up a time for us to get together so I can explain to you the process, do a little more discovery. Okay, but don't overthink it. But for me, when they're not responding, I don't worry about them anymore. I'll have a list, an intake sheet, so that I know where to follow up, but I start focusing on other people. Don't put all your eggs in that basket. That'll stress you out, okay? So that's the quickest way I can respond to them. Yep, just keep prospecting, keep finding more popcorn seeds, it'll pop off, it will, it'll work out for you. Okay?
Are you still doing that call center today at 1 o'clock?
Actually, thank you for reminding me of that. Do we want to do that? I didn't have that set, I got a couple.
Was that
set time to do it. It
I have
was.
to go out and get a
Michael.
gift card or something.
No, I don't think we're doing that today.
Okay.
Not with Mike Ferry coming up on Thursday.
Alright.
We're still prepping for that. So yeah, so hopefully everybody's making it Thursday. I know you got a new listing.
I do, but my open house, the broker tour, I'm keeping it open for you guys until 1 o'clock.
Thank
and
you.
it's a
Be
house.
there. Oh, is it
Maybe we
the?
should bring
Yeah,
Mike
you
Ferry.
do not want to miss this house.
It looks
Not.
insane.
Go after.
Ju- Well, you haven't seen the inside.
The outside's
The
insane.
outside, the pictures are coming
Are
today.
we good with the tacos?
Yeah, you guys get.
1.8,
Okay, cool.
8.5,
So,
starting price.
It's until 1.
beautiful.
It's until 1. I hope to see you.
Let's all carpool.
we will.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get a taco.
We'll be there.
To get in the car and go to
Get Mike Ferry to check it out.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Hey guys, I'm gonna, yeah, we're wrapping up.
See if we can, with a taco in his hand.
Did you bring me a vegetarian taco with you?
Yes, we will.
No, great.
This is amazing,
This
guys.
is great.
It is great.
All right, I have to go to